Thank you. Okay. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there is generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. We are going to go ahead and start with the county manager update.
Thank you, Vice Chair Banks, members of the board. Good morning. Just a reminder for the board, which is actually a pretty exciting event, is on July 31st. There'll be the ribbon cutting for the Columbia Inn. Obviously a long process and a still fully engaged process as we get the facility ready, but it looks like July 31st will be the day. So we're almost there. The other is just about the agenda today. We have a number of presentations, and it includes Charles Deister from Charter, who will be the first speaker. And as we turn it over to Charles, I just wanted to give a little, background. Obviously, the rural broadband issues and the underserved communities has been a priority issue for the board, and certainly the ARPA dollars and the other federal dollars that became available through various legislation have become kind of the linchpin of dealing with these underserved communities. And, I feel fortunate that the county and through Charter's leadership has been accessing some RDOF dollars, which is the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. And so Charter is making a lot of investments in these areas. And so Charles is here to give us an overview of what those investments look like. And so there he is. So hi, Charles, good morning. So I'm going to turn it over to Charles. I know your board will probably have questions as we work through this presentation. So I know that Charles is ready for those as well. So thanks, Charles.
Thank you, Don. And thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. It's a pleasure. I've got just a few slides I want to run through to give you an overview of what we have going on in Oregon and specifically in your area. And then I have some answers to some specific questions that Don had provided me in advance that came from commissioners. So I'll address those and then open it up for questions. And now I'm going to attempt a screen share.
No luck so far.
First, I need to get my PowerPoint presentation into the correct mode. So apologies. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, just to give you a brief introduction, into Charter. I know that you're very familiar with us as we're the largest provider, and certainly in Clatsop County. We're the most people in the Portland metro area and the Willamette Valley, they don't know who we are, but we're very well known, of course, up and down the coast and in Southern Oregon. We're currently the largest service provider in 20 out of 36 counties in the state. We serve 283,000 customers across the state. So that makes us the second largest provider behind Comcast, and we're by far the largest provider in the rural counties of the state. So partnerships with local communities. This is something that Don and I have been chatting about on and off for the last probably 18 months, maybe even a little longer than that. We just like you, are tracking very closely the state's broadband grant fund, which, there are administrative rules that are being developed for that program, and we're hoping the funds will be accessible to all of us for applications sometime this fall. And that's something that we are looking at. We're looking at potential projects across our footprint, which again, it's up and down the coast, Douglas, Jackson, Josephine, Lake counties primarily. And so we're looking at where we can build off of our existing RDOF projects, because we have a lot of RDOF projects underway. As you know, we have RDOF projects underway in Clatsop and Columbia counties. We have construction underway around Medford, around Grants Pass, Cave Junction. And so what we're hoping to do is, while we already have these crews in the field on RDOF projects, we're looking at, okay, since we're here, we're deployed, we've got people on the ground, where can we build off of those RDOF projects since we already have people deployed? And so we have what we call synergy passings, which are those areas where the RDOF project has allowed us to reach a certain area. Okay, since we're going to go this far, can we reach that next neighborhood? Does it make sense? And we're just going to do that with our dollars. So that's something that we're looking at, and we're already doing right now with our RDOF projects. And we're looking at how we can build off of those under the state's grant program. Charter is proud to participate in the federal Affordable Connectivity Program. It's a great program providing qualifying households 100 megs download for $30 a month. We also have our own Spectrum Internet Assist program. That's a very valuable program, ensures that low-income households have an opportunity to access high-speed internet. And then we also offer we also have several bulk offerings. So we work with a number of school districts in 19 states where we come in as a bulk provider, providing reduced cost internet for certainly for the schools, and then for students, so that students can access high-speed internet at home. We currently operate, in fact, we currently have an agreement with the Los Angeles School District, which is the largest in the nation. So it's something we've replicated in other states, and that's something we'd certainly entertain for any school districts in Oregon. And then we also offer bulk rate solutions for things such as public housing projects. I don't know if that's something that really applies in Clatsop County. I don't know if you have the density for that to make sense for you, but it's something that we're always open to a conversation about, to see if it could help ensure that everybody has an opportunity to access the service. That's it for my brief slides. That's my contact information. I'll put that back. I'll just leave that there for the moment. And then I've got a few questions that Dawn provided. So I wanted to provide answers to, and then open it up for Q&A. So the first question was, what are the timeframes for offering broadband to residences? Folks see the broadband being hung on poles, but wondering about residential installation of timing. So equipment has been installed, has already been installed to serve Napa, Svensson, Brownsmead, and Olney. And those service areas will be activated by the end of 2023. So within the next 5 months. Second question. Are there any areas along Highway 30 not included in your expansion plans? Could the county supplement the RDOF with ARPA funds if necessary to cover additional areas? So we have a good majority of Highway 30 covered from Napa to Clatskanie, and we're currently looking into whether any areas won't be covered. If not, we would welcome the opportunity to partner with the county on extending coverage. And Dawn, that might be something that we need a follow-up meeting with some of our engineering team and perhaps somebody from the county's planning department, just to make sure that we're both looking at the right areas. So just an idea. Third question, regarding Highway 202, is there any way current efforts could be expanded to Jewel and Highway 103 north of Sunset? This is the highly underserved area we were contemplating a wireless solution for. Would Charter be interested in expanding service to these areas, and would any county funding ARPA be necessary to get this accomplished? So our response, Jewel is 15 miles past the end of our RDOF build. At this time, we have no plans to expand that far south. However, we would welcome the opportunity to partner with the county on that through either the use of the county's ARPA funds or the state broadband grant fund. Fourth question. We noticed Charter is also investing in Columbia County out to Fishhawk Lake. Is there any chance the service can be expanded to incorporate the residences around the lake, mainly on the Clatsop County side? Response. Charter's looking into expanding our RDOF build to the west side of Fishhawk Lake. We're currently in discussions with the pole owner in the area to see if we can reach those areas or reach those residences. And so those are the questions that Dawn had provided in advance, and be happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Mr. Deister, I want to thank you for coming today. I can't say I was particularly gracious with you during our last conversation, so I'll publicly apologize. Well,
I didn't take it personally.
Well, you know what? It really isn't personal. My frustration with having an absolutely essential public utility that is so outside of my span of influence or control is just so frustrating, because we need you, which is something that I think you understand. It's, for me, it's essential that we get broadband everywhere in this county. And I'm assuming we're talking last mile, not just middle mile, but absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, we're yes, ma'am. This is all, if we need to install, additional middle mile resources to serve these residences, we're doing that as part of the build, but this is all about last, we're a last mile provider.
okay, so we're talking last mile, but if we aren't talking everybody, then I'm still going to be cranky with you, even if you aren't totally in control of this. So just forewarned. The other thing is, it always puzzles me that when we're talking about connectivity, I'm told that I, as an individual consumer, have to provide data to people. It astonishes me that the provider of the utility isn't able to both gather and give that information. It seems duplicitous. And
I'm not sure I follow you, Commissioner.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, so when we say, oh, do we have broadband? We're told, okay, you have to do a test at home to see what your broadband coverage is. I don't understand that. I mean, my electricity provider, my water provider, they check my utility connection and they know the volumes that I have. Why doesn't my internet provider?
So have you received that request for a speed test from Charter?
Oh, I've had it from 16 different kinds of people. Does Charter know it? And I don't understand. I mean, because why are people asking me for the data if Charter already has it?
I could not answer that, Commissioner. That seems backwards to me. We know what speeds are being provided at, or are certainly being capable of being provided at every residence. And if there's an issue, for example, if according to our engineering data, if your residence is capable of receiving, say, 1 gig service, and you're not receiving that speed, then we would dispatch a service call to find out what's going on. I mean, we know what our network is delivering or capable of delivering at every address.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because going forward, I'm going to count on that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and also, Commissioner, to one of your earlier points, if there are, your community certainly better than we do. And if there are particular areas that you are concerned about, or that you want to make sure, and I mean, down to the street level, that you want to make sure, okay, is it covered in this project? And if not, can you get there? Please follow up with me. We're interested in that.
Invitation accepted, details to be arranged.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions?
Chair Bangs, if I might, I just wanted to share that, at least from my perspective, how this broadband network is going to be developed into these underserved areas is by what Charter is doing. And I think the framework is going to be in place. And I think this is the quickest way for enhanced services to be provided to those underserved communities. And I think we're fortunate to have Charter here doing this work. And I think it is, and something that Charles mentioned, is it is incumbent upon the county and Charter to be active partners as we do this, so we can help each other, because there are pockets that Charter may not be aware of that the county is, and potentially they are aware of also others. And so, I'm actually feeling very positive about where we are, and that the train has left the station, and there'll be some discernible improvements in a relatively short amount of time. And so I think this is the process working. And I am glad, though, that there's additional resources coming to bear, because it's going to take additional resources to make this happen. So that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate those assurances, both from you and from Charter. I appreciate very much the work that you've done and the devotion that Mr. Deister particularly has shown to meeting the needs of people in Clatsop County. So the next time I stop, I don't want to name particular businesses, I would call them mid-county businesses in the heart of Clatsop County. I expect them to be rejoicing because they now have adequate internet connectivity to actually conduct their businesses. Thank you, sir.
I think that we all can agree that we are excited to see changes coming. I know my community is extremely excited, and I am extremely grateful that Charter's picked up this all and is running with it. I don't ever want to hear again about a family not being able to have connectivity either via phone line or via internet for months at a time. And I'm just looking forward to and thank you, Mr. Deister, for all of your efforts and for your communication with our county. And I just look forward to even having Charter at my home, because I have connectivity issues. So this will be good. This will be great. I'm appreciative. Do we have any other questions?
And
Okay.
if I may,
Seeing none, I think that.
If I could, Commissioner,
go ahead.
Just like to just make the point that I know we're talking specifically just about broadband this morning, but in all of our new service territories that we're hooking up, and it'll be no different than our existing service territories. So customers will have they'll have access to all of our services, whether that's internet, cable, VoIP, or mobile service.
Wow, we haven't had cable service out here ever, so that's actually pretty awesome. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. This is going to be great. So thank you again for all of your time and all of your efforts, Mr. Deister. And if we don't have any further questions, we're going to go ahead and move on. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Excellent. Thank you. All right. It looks like next on our work session agenda is Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. Oh, nope. We were just there. Port of Astoria Airport Industrial Park. Who will be presenting on that today?
Chair Bangs, yeah, Matt McGrath from the port will be presenting. Go ahead, Matt. Thanks.
I'm just going to share my screen here real quickly. And I've just got one slide to share with you this morning, just to give you a little bit of a history and update on what's going on at the airport. This is just a follow-up to a presentation that we made last year on the Airport Industrial Park and what's going on there. Obviously now we have Schooler up and running out there. So that's the first development that the industrial park has seen. And so that's an exciting thing for us. And it's been a long process going through the permitting and the wetlands and all of the things that we had to work through. But it's good to have Schooler on board and up and running now. So what's going on at the airport now, and you may have seen with just driving around town, we have an open house coming on August 19th and a fly-in. So the Coast Guard is going to be opening up their operations and showing the public what is going on with the Coast Guard. We have a number of demonstrations going to be done by Life Flight. We have Warbirds coming in. So there's a significant amount of interest and an augmented interest in the airport as of late. We're in the middle of redoing our entire terminal building right now. So that's all being remodeled. We priced our aviation fuel very low, so we're getting a lot of traffic. Our general aviation traffic has approximately doubled here in the last year. And we just have a number of projects, not only at the airport, but on the central waterfront that are going to need some good development plans. And part of those development plans are going to be wetlands mitigation. So what you see on your screen now is the 26 acres of the Airport Industrial Park as it was initially contemplated. And what we had looked at and talked about with some consultants was basically developing the north half of the industrial park, so the north 13 acres, while turning the south 13 acres into low-grade wetlands. And so that was the intent, and we had already talked with the Department of State Lands about that, and they had said that that was an idea that they could work with. Since then, we've had some further discussions and realized that because industrial lands are so hard to come by, it's going to be better for us to look at developing the entirety of the industrial park and doing the mitigation off-site. So the port owns over 1,000 acres on the Skipanon right in Warrenton. And so this is one of the things that we're looking at is doing wetlands mitigation and potentially setting up a mitigation bank in the area for development projects for the airport and for the central waterfront and potentially even for Clatsop County. So to that end, the port applied for and received a technical assistance grant from Business Oregon to look at the feasibility of setting up mitigation strategies and a potential mitigation bank along the Skipanon for development within Clatsop County. Specifically, we were looking at the industrial park here and the central waterfront. Since then, I've actually had a discussion with Wes Giesbrecht. So as you know, the county applied for and received the same type of technical assistance grant to look at wetlands mitigation strategies for the North Coast Business Park. So and I talked with Wes at length about some of the potential synergies that we have. And so that's one of the things that we're working through now. We're going to be setting up a scope of work that we can look at doing mitigation along the Skipanon for projects that are not only in the pipeline right now that we know of, which are much easier to mitigate, but setting up a bank for those future projects that we just don't know yet. And one of the things with the development at the industrial park and the development within a lot of Clatsop County is that we're at a bit of a competitive disadvantage because of the in-depth permitting that we need to do the wetlands, especially when you start talking to a number of developers and business owners about, hey, we need to do wetlands, we need to do this, we need to do that. their eyes kind of glaze over and they go somewhere else. And I've had that happen already at the industrial park, where there was a tenant that wanted to move in and set up a plant. And when I told them about the wetlands process, they went to Washington. So this is one of the things that we're looking at kind of abating is getting that competitive disadvantage, and at least getting the industrial park as much to a plug and play capability as we can. And so this wetlands work in the background is really going to be kind of the backbone of that. So anyway, what we were looking for from the county is to say, hey, we're working on the permitting side. We have some development dollars that we need to spend on roads. We obviously need to work on the permitting. And so what our initial ask was a little over $800,000 to start that work. And I know that there was some consternation on that amount. And in discussions with county staff, said, we're not looking for all of that right now. Anything that the county might be able to offer would be helpful. But it's just, again, I want to iterate that we're just trying to eliminate that disadvantage that we have with all of the hoops and hurdles that we need to jump through with the wetland side of things. So I won't belabor this and beat it to death. So I'll just go ahead and stop there and see if you have any questions.
It looks like Commissioner Thompson does. Go ahead.
Leaping in, I've spent a lot of time this week as chair of COLPAC, as we're searching out our next executive director. Your needs, your concerns, and your projects are very much front of mind with me. I appreciate, Mr. McGrath, that you came to COLPAC. I would encourage you to keep coming so that we keep your needs in the forefront of our awareness and are better able to support you every which way. We're looking for staff who will be capable of supporting your efforts. I want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Matt, I'm really pleased that you all are talking about doing some wetland banking. I think we're desperately needing that kind of thing, I think, in both of our industrial parks. Have you taken a look at the new mapping that FEMA has come out with? And does this, for instance, map here, does that reflect that? Because in the Warrenton area, they were just brutal.
I've looked at it. It's not going to affect this so much, but yeah, that's a huge concern with everything that's going on with FEMA. I just don't see that that's going to affect the industrial park too terribly much. Wonderful.
That's great. That's really, really good news. And thanks for going toward the wetland banking, because I think we really have got to, I think that's one of the few answers we have to the new buy-up stuff. And I think it's really wonderfully necessary. So thanks so much for doing that. And, Commissioner Thompson mentioned COLPAC as a former economic development administration staff person who used to work on industrial parks. I certainly smell some money there for you, and anything that I could do to help out with that, I'd be very happy to do. So thanks, Matt. Well, I think that we all feel that, we're going to try to do as much as we can for you.
Appreciate that.
County Manager.
Thank you, Chair Bangs, members of the board. So just as a little background, part of what Matt was referring to as a previous request from the port that would really focus on the allocation of some of the industrial revolving funds to help kickstart their airport. Sorry, I have Air Force on my mind, as you can imagine. With the airport in industrial park. And so what I would suggest, if the board is amenable, is that Matt and I will touch base, and then I'll come back with the proposal for an allocation of that industrial revolving fund to help kickstart this project. And of course, the county is interested and excited to work with the port as Wes works through the North Coast Business Park to see what kind of partnership might be available in that arena. Because I think for really the development of the North Coast Business Park, off-site mitigation will optimize what can be done on-site. So we look forward to that, but Matt and I will touch base and I'll come back with a recommendation on that first contribution to the project. So
Wonderful.
I love that. Along with that, could we do a best guess of projected economic improvement or economic value that this potentially will bring for us in this community? Like what best guess, I guess, to just see what growth that this will bring to us. I think that, you know, with people and funding and so on and so forth, I think that they'd really want to hear and see our goal with the funding. So thank you so much for your time today, Mr. McGrath.
Sure. And just to dovetail in on that, obviously that's a bit of a guess, you know, and so we can look at a number of different scenarios. I sent something over last night to Teresa, but again, with 26 acres, there's a lot of different, there's different scenarios that may play out, which could affect those revenues to the county. But we can run several of those, and I can check with the county staff and see really what their parameters might be, and then we can get some of those over to the commission.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I will say I have noticed traffic at the airport. It's been kind of exciting to see. The kids love it at school. They'll hear those big ones go over and they get really excited. So that's been fun. Yeah. County Manager, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna reinforce what Matt said, is that even on the North Coast Business Park, depending upon what the combination of on-site, off-site mitigation would be for the development, is going to drastically alter what the array of businesses and the configuration of those businesses on site. And so obviously the financial side of the equation changes greatly, whether you can develop 30 acres, 60 acres, 100 acres. And so it's all, those are all the variables we don't know. But I think at the bottom and kind of the baseline I look at it as is that every acre that's developable on the site makes it a better number for the county, both in terms of jobs and in terms of actual assessed value. So thank you.
Do you have anything else to add, Mr. McGrath?
No, that is it. Just thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you for coming today and sharing with us.
You're very welcome.
There's no further questions. Let's go ahead and move on to the legislative update. Who do we have here today that's going to be presenting?
This is Phil from PacWest.
Excellent, Phil. It's good to see you today. Hear you.
Thank you, and I apologize. Clearly, I'm not Ryan Tribbett, which is what my Zoom tag says. I don't know why today it's just acting up on that. Sorry. So, yeah, if it's okay with you, just want me to jump right in and talk about quick updates since our last meeting, and then looking forward to the deadlines and outlines that have been presented to us for the interim.
Can we lose Matt's screen, please?
Oh.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm working on
Teresa
it.
able to do that?
Yes, just one moment.
Thank you.
And if you'd like me, I do have a little graphic on the session parameters, if you'd like me to share that on my screen while I'm going over them.
Yes, please.
Perfect. Okay, so last time we had talked, we had just finished up session. Our session was winding up. They were dealing with the walkouts and coming back in and trying to get out of session cleanly. So where we have left off is they are now moving into the interim. They have taken the first step of going through caucus elections. This last week, House Democrats held their elections. Nothing really changed in leadership on their end, except for, I think we saw Pam Marsh, who was from
Do we have a connectivity issue? Am I frozen or are you frozen?
I'm seeing Phil frozen.
Screen,
Okay,
or Phil, looks like your screen froze.
And Chair Bangs, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Your voice is kind of breaking up. I don't know.
I will come closer.
I don't know if that
Does
helps.
that help?
I hope, is our friend from Charter still on board so he can understand where you live and what's going on here?
sorry about that. Can everybody hear me again? Sorry. Okay, am I good?
Go ahead, Ryan.
All right, sorry about that. Clearly, I was going to make the joke, speaking of broadband and connectivity issues. But yeah, no, as we were going through, House Democrats have held their elections this last week. There was only one change there. There is anticipated House Republican elections that are going to occur no later than right after Labor Day, but I think that is going to get moved up, and there is going to be a challenge there, and we might be seeing some changes in leadership. So that will change the dynamics of going into a special a session that's just 1 month long. There's some disagreements on how the walkout was handled between caucuses, and so we shall see how that all plays out. Those meetings are not open to the public. They obviously just meet and elect from their peers in the caucus. But it will set a tone for how the short session will be handled. In addition, they did publish the guidelines for the upcoming legislative session, and that's what I have shared on the screen here. We know that in this full session, there was unlimited bill requests, and those get limited in the short session. So each senator will only have 2 bills, as will each representative. But the committees themselves, which have not been published yet right now, they have just announced the emergency board. They will start populating committees on some get consolidated down into one and some expand out into subcommittees. But when they announce that, we know that these interim committees can introduce no more than 3 bills each. So just looking at what the number of committees were last year or last interim, you're looking at probably another 50 to 60 bills coming from there. And then the governor's office on behalf of the executive branch gets no more than 3, and the judicial branch gets no more than 3. So just there, you're probably looking in a 1 month session of about 250 to 300 bills being introduced. But there are exceptions. So the House Rules Committee and the Senate President's Office will have unlimited bill introduction abilities, as will Joint Ways and Means committees. And so that is going to be limited. Usually they don't introduce a ton. And if it is, it's regarded towards the budget specifically. And then they also published the deadlines. So this is what's really important as we work backwards to developing a work plan for the county in a legislative approach, is that they're moving fast. There's no real interims anymore when you look at deadlines. November 9th is the first deadline that comes up, and that's during legislative days. That's when we have to have our bill drafts to legislative council no later than 5 p.m. And when I say us, that's any of those on the left-hand side, all of those bill numbers or bill requests that we just covered, all of those have to meet that same deadline. So whether you're the governor's office or a representative or it's a committee bill, they all have to get to legislative council before 5 p.m. on the 9th. On the 8th of January, those have to be delivered back to members. And if they keep the same protocol that they did last year, or last interim, you're only able to request amendments before you drop that bill. One amendment, like if it comes back from LC and there's an error and there's multiple ones, there's not back and forth until it's right. We kind of ran into that with our county bill where we had to go back and forth multiple times this session. In short sessions, you get one request, then they publish it, and you have to go through the amendment process publicly if you want it changed beyond that. So that's something to remember that was changed during COVID to being this new way, and it's still catching people off guard. So just want to make sure we highlight that for you. And then January 12th is when those bills need to be submitted to both the House Clerk and the Senate President, not Senate President, Senate Secretary of the Senate's offices by 5 p.m. so that they can get a bill and it will be introduced on day one of the session. Again, those deadlines are not subject to Joint Ways and Means or the House rules or the Senate President's office. Part of that is just because they have the flexibility that if something comes up that's an emergency and we've passed one of the deadlines, then that allows them to have some flexibility to still introduce a bill. So I am going to switch screens here, stop sharing and switch the other one that
It looks like Commissioner Thompson has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious about special districts because we've seen that our special districts need help, in my opinion. They provide essential public services, but the only accountability is through the ballot box or the courtroom. So that if there are performance issues, whether it's, misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance, whether it's well-intended, whether it's, I would say, not so well-intended, is it possible to consider, and this is what Leanne, Commissioner Thompson wants. I haven't checked this out with anybody. Is it possible to have maybe a work group, a concept introduced for a work group to look at how to provide sidebars and consequences to special districts?
I mean, procedural wise, yeah, you can introduce legislation that would create that work group. Traditionally, when you see those type of bills, the work group is required to report back with recommendations. And then that translates into a new bill moving forward. I think ideally, if you're wanting to look at that, you're wanting to make sure that the work group is balanced. That would be important because that will come out. The special districts have their lobby for their lobbyists as well, and so they want to make sure that that work group is balanced. And I know there's a lot of different types of special districts, so I think maybe in that verbiage, you'd want to say, does the special district association represent them all, or are you wanting to have each individual district have a representation in that work group, which could get very big pretty quick. But to your question, yeah, you can draft a bill that says we would like to establish a work group. That procedurally wise, there's nothing that prohibits that.
Okay,
But you would have to find a sponsor. Yes.
Well, there would be that, wouldn't there? But
Yeah, sorry.
well, Senator Weber has been very aware of some of the issues we've had. And, she might very well be willing to do such a thing. My colleagues and I have not discussed this. As I said, this is just me raising my head and saying, I see an issue and wanting to bring it up for discussion. So thank you for that feedback. I'll work with staff and the rest of my colleagues to see if we have, as a body, to see if we have appetite for that. Thank you.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Well, and then just moving forward, what we were going to use, knowing the parameters and knowing legislative days coming up, we have drafted it's a living document that's a work plan for us to put you in the best position moving into the short session. And part of that is just listing out every week between now and short session and saying, okay, what needs to be done, starting from those deadlines we just covered and working backwards. And so in highlighting that, we know when legislative days are, and there's a couple things and tactics that in our draft plan, we would like to make sure we consider. One is that bridge funding that is still high on our list. It did not make capital construction, but we have been talking with Representative Greg Smith and Rayfield's office and talking about, is there a way, since it's not a high dollar capital request, to make it an e-board request? At the end of the last days of session, there was conversations about everything with people coming back into the building, pushing budget bills out as quick as possible. There are things that were dropped, and it was not just capital construction. Obviously, there's been a lot of media on the housing bill. That was the governor's top priority for the housing bill that was died by one vote on the Senate floor, literally right before the sine die bill. There's still conversations going on, and I will check in with Mark Long on our team. He's been visiting with the governor's office. They are considering potentially having a special session to bring that bill back. I know when the bill died, short of one vote, there was some conversation on the floor. There was somebody willing to switch their vote to a yes, and they just they ran out of time before having it reconsidered. So there is conversation that the governor would consider a special session for that one singular bill to come back. It does not mean it has to come back in the form that it died on the floor on. So they are reaching out and talking about, are there little things that are not going to upset the vote count that should be included in that. There's no draft version other than what we saw in the last version of the bill currently. And there's no actual date that they're talking about as of right now. Traditionally, if it's a one-type special session like that, they'll put it on the front end or the back end of legislative days, since legislators will be down there anyway. And so we're going to keep an eye out and keep hearing. I will check in with Mark to get an update. I know he just met with the governor's office on that this last week. So that was one thing that was dropped. There were a lot of little capital construction projects. And when I say little, I don't mean to offend. It's in the scheme of the state budget, which is billions. We're talking about things that are less than $3 million that can be funded straight with general fund. There was a lot of angst across legislators who did not get certain things that were committed to into these last bills. Because of that, the speaker has been visiting with folks, and as we have been visited with Rep. Smith, who sits on capital construction, there is an appetite to do a small capital construction allocation through e-board. They have put money in e-board significantly, I think up to $700 million. And so in the work plan, we build backwards from that. So if we're looking at September legislative days, those requests have to go to the governor's office and DAS 1 month ahead of that to have the paperwork solidified for e-board. And so I have to apologize. I got this draft work plan over to Amanda this morning, added a couple additional things that we found out through caucus elections. And so that ideally will be circulated around, but please keep in mind, this is a living document. It's going to be added to, taken away from as we schedule meetings, you add it to that, and it just gives you folks a timeline to see where we're working backwards from. The key parts that I just want to make sure you're aware of is I have on ours this month, the week of the 23rd, to have delivered to you folks all the state budget briefs for ODOT, Department of Forestry, Emergency Management, OHA, Veterans, and Housing. Those should be finalized the week of the 23rd and to you. And then on last week, we were going to start talking with our general counsel, Henry, and start doing the bill versions, or at least talk with your staff that if we're wanting to bring back the bill versions that we're not able to make it across the finish line this session, have some draft language, start having our council draft that in a way that we don't have to rely on LC giving us one turnaround. Hopefully we can have that done and delivered to them in a way that all they have to do is just reproduce the document. That we have scheduled for the first week of August, with the idea that by the end of August, we would like to present those things for the board to consider, so that at the end of August, we're moving forward towards legislative days with final bill concepts finalized in writing, and we can start scheduling meetings with legislators to start discussing them. You really have legislative days in September, November, and then January is them organizing for the February session. And so while it seems far off, you have really just 2 legislative day sessions where they're going to have informational hearings about potential bills to come forward in the short session. And so getting ahead of that is very, very helpful. And if the board approves those concepts, we would start developing collateral for advocacy in September, October, and December and January, starting to schedule all of those meetings to advocate for those bills specifically. Once that session starts, and I believe I have it here on there, it starts, session begins February 5th, and it'll go through March 10th. By the first week, you already have your first chamber deadline. And so that's why you see us pushing in the interim a little bit more, because we want to, nothing prohibits us from having meetings with these folks outside of session. So we can have our meetings with legislators, get their commitments if they're supportive, and walk into session knowing that that first week we can just talk to chairs and say, we need this scheduled for a public hearing and work session. So, I believe that's all I really wanted to cover right now. There are a few things in the work plan that are going to be missing because we don't have dates yet. Some of those high priority bills that we discussed during session that did pass, agencies, we're still waiting for them to schedule when the public rulemaking dates are. They have not on all bills done that yet. DEQ seems to be the best at it a little bit because they will publish a document that says rulemaking for this subject will be between these dates and these dates. Not all agencies work like that. So we're just keeping an eye, and when we see those dates pop up, they will be inserted into the work plan just so that the board can see and staff can see if we want to engage, then this would be the time to do it. So I'm just going to pause there for a second and see if there's any questions, anything else that I need to respond to. So,
Of course, I have another one. Madam-
Commissioner Thompson has a question.
If I may.
Yes.
Well, so for the first time in a long time, Senator Johnson hasn't been there as Ways and Means Tri-Chair. We do have that strong interest in reallocation of the transient occupancy tax. I mean, do you think we have a better way forward than we've had before? Or I don't know how those two factors play together, if at all, but wondering.
I don't know if they play together. I do know it's a hot topic issue. It didn't get off to the right foot by the one bill, which was not the county's bill. There was the bill that just, I believe it just added a tax or increased the tax. And that was one that just nobody was going to support. And then when the walkout happened, any new type of ideas were just, they were just trying to get to the end of session and pass a budget. No new big ideas were they wanting to entertain. In the short session, ideally, if leadership's changed a little bit, there's still debate of whether there's going to be a short session if people show up because the budgets are passed. And that's what was one of the big drivers to have the Senate Republicans come back. That's not going to be there in short session. So I would say it's more likely if there are some maybe more leadership changes where there was more concern, more confidence that right now we know short session is going to happen. These are going to be the topics. Where I would like to play out in one of those legislative days is follow up with Representative Gomberg and see if that could be a informational hearing and use the report that the county did to have that as part of our hearing. The county can report or, oh, sorry, Don.
No, you go ahead and finish.
Oh yeah, sorry, and I'm spitballing. I apologize. Yeah, I'm.
Go ahead and finish, and then I'll just weigh in.
Okay. Okay. So there's options there if you're looking at getting that in front of folks. But I would say if you can get it as an informational hearing legislative days, you have a much better opportunity during a short session because they will say, we discussed this. It's not new. We discussed it during the interim. So, but we would have to have a new bill drafted. So.
And if I could, Chair Bangs, members of the board, real quick, there's a little bit more background because this is a very fluid topic, as you can imagine, because it was discussed with the governor when she was in town. And I've had subsequent conversations with her staff just recently. And so I haven't had a chance to talk to Phil or anybody really about all the details. But, I think that this is obviously a very sensitive topic when you look at it from a statewide perspective. And I think the art is going to be in coming up with metrics that would identify counties that are uniquely situated that because of the impacts of tourism, a different formula would be defensible. And so I think the art is going to get down to to what's the metrics that would allow these highly impacted tourism counties to have more flexibility. I think the governor's office is just a little concerned about if it is too big of a number, then it's like everybody would want to be in that pool, and that would create, hurdles that we may not be able to get over. But if we can identify the metrics, and I did share a study, and that's just one study with the governor's office. I shared it with the board previously. It was a HUD study that came and identified 7 recreational counties. If it's those metrics or some other metrics, the biggest art form is going to be what are those metrics? And so all of that work has to kind of get done before we go with any kind of a proposal, because that's where the details are in getting something that's actually, potentially acceptable. And so I think that likely that will be a long session issue, because there's going to have to be a lot of conversations about what these metrics are. I am meeting with the author of the study that I just talked about, and we're going to talk about the metrics they used, but there may be other metrics. And so that's kind of where that is. It's going to be not an easy process, as Phil mentioned. There's a lot of feelings and thoughts about transient lodging tax in the state, and all 36 counties are uniquely situated. And so it's not going to be easy, but I think there is a path forward. And that's partly what I talked to the governor's office about, is just the more we can have their support in the process, and then ultimately getting to a draft bill that has some legs moving forward is what we're really looking for. So thank you.
And Don, if I could just add, I do think you're spot on.
Thank you, County Manager. Do you have any other questions?
You can go ahead, Phil. Sorry, Chair Banks.
No, you're good. Sorry. I was just checking if my internet cut out again. So I would just say I really do think you're right there, because when we're having those conversations, there's an interest in it, but it's threading the needle, the right needle at the right place, because the people know that something has to be fixed. Public safety is on the front of a lot of people's minds, and infrastructure. So it's just, Don, I think you're spot on. We have to thread the needle the right way the first time. Otherwise, it becomes a big hornet's nest. So.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, I had one question. I'm looking at one of the legislative pages online, and it appears that there were only 10 bills passed here in this law. Is that correct?
You cut out a little bit, Commissioner, and I just want to make sure I heard your question completely. I don't know if
I'm looking at Legiscan online, and it appears there were only 10 bills passed here this legislative session. Is that correct?
No, let me rephrase and make sure that it only appears that 10 bills were passed this session. Is that what no, because that right off the bat, the budget bills, there's 60, 70 of those. And so,
beyond the budget bills.
Oh, no, I believe that there's been more than that. I can double check and run those numbers for you. But a lot of things did get consolidated out into the budget bills. But no, I think that first 2 months when people were there, they were passing bills out. And so I can get you exact numbers if that's helpful.
I would like a short list of the exact bills. That would be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I can run that report today.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Because we'd all like to know that. Thank you.
Excellent. If we don't have any questions, thank you, Phil, for coming today. Does anybody have anything else? County Manager, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair Bangs, I was just waving to Phil, sorry. So, thanks, Phil.
Chair Bangs, you're muted.
I will win this war with my computer, I hope, or my internet. I'm not sure which one it is right now. So let's go ahead and move on to our biannual update on veteran services on page 7. And it looks like Mr. Wiley, you're here to present.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Chair Bangs. Thank you, County Commissioners, for this opportunity. I'll try and share these slides real quick here. All right, is that showing up for everyone? Oh,
Not so much.
I'm not sure where it's all gone. Forgive me.
No, it's something, the little gremlins eat
There
them.
you go.
I'm going to stop sharing screens because mine is going absolutely nuts. My apologies.
We can see your screen now.
The one with the slides?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad that happened. All right. So my name is Carl Wiley. I'm the new Clatsop County Veteran Service Office officer, relatively speaking. I started February of this year. And today I want to kind of go over an introduction of who I am quickly, and then what has happened data-wise since I took the position, and then kind of what the future operations look like as we go forward in this position, and then just open it up for any questions. I'm aware that we're pushing over time here, so I want to be conscientious of that as well. So the first slide here is the introduction or the overview, and then I'll go into the introduction, allegedly. Okay, so I was born and raised here in Warrenton, Oregon. Well, I was born in Astoria, raised most of my life here in Warrenton, graduated Warrenton High School. Since after graduation, I joined the United States Air Force, and I've served the United States Air Force for 24 years, the first 4 years in law enforcement, air-based defense, and then the last 20 years in religious affairs, doing a lot of helping agency work with our airmen, and then also a bunch of other branches in the joint tours that I've done. I recently retired and was hired for this job here, so I was ecstatic to be able to come home, and I'm passionate about continuing to serve people, and especially fellow veterans who have been all the places. During my career, I was able to experience Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, and a number of different states, the United States. So have a lot of shared experiences with the veterans that we get to serve here in the county. Moving on to current operations. Since I began in February 21st of this year, the Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs is helping me get accredited, and we use a system called VetraSpec to track all the veterans that come to the county VSOs as to be represented. And I pulled some reports, and that data shows that we've got, you can see the breakdown of the cities here, veterans by cities, which if you do the math is 1,748 registered veterans in VetraSpec, which is about half of what I'm tracking from the last census, was a little over 3,500. So there's that big goal out there, of course, of getting all 3,500 plus veterans connected to the system and to their VA benefits. But this is our breakdown of veterans by city. And then there's also the number of different types of contacts that I've had since the beginning. Here, I had 146 veterans through my office. I'm not going to just read the slides to you here, but I've been able to connect 69 new veterans with services that they didn't previously know they were eligible for, or just hadn't taken the time to reach out for. So that's been a positive change. And as a result of that, monthly compensation that's come into those veterans here in the county is has totaled a little over 36,000, and then retroactive payments for like back pay on their claims has been an additional 159, almost 160,000 during these past few months. As part of the position here as the service officer, it's one, knowing the system. The VA system is a very complex and complicated system, and getting our veterans brought into it and help them understand it and to do the forms and claims process for them. But secondary to that is outreach. Some of the things that I've been able to do is attend our monthly breakfasts where I get to interact with the veterans. I've also been working with the Clatsop County Sheriff's Office, parole and probation side,